Welcome back, friends. Today and for the next few episodes, Sarah and I are going to take up the great gift of baptism, and we're going to do somewhat of a historical survey of the sacrament, and we're going to limit it to the apostolic and patristic period, not, of course, the full patristic period. We're going to look at the patristics, Pre Constantine and Nicene era. So it will be, if you will, a companion set of classes, episodes, talks to what we did with the Holy Eucharist. And just as a clarification or reminder of why pick Pre Constantine, and it is because, right, our separated brethren and those who have more liberal tendencies within the Catholic Church tend to coalesce around that same time period, maybe for different sorts of reasons, but they themselves tend to want to focus before 311 and 325 respectively. I think it also is one of those natural byproducts of humanity that we like to know where are our origins, So that's kind of the consideration of the sacrament, though, is going to follow the trajectory of the Catechism, second edition. All right, and so there's a lot of ways to organize this material. So that's our time frame, right, before 311, 325. And now, how does the Catechism see it? That came about because I've heard this many a time, and I've heard it just very recently when I was working on these notes, complaining that the Catechism is hard to understand and to follow. And it is true if one approaches the Catechism we have now as an encyclopedia. One could do that with the Baltimore Catechism, and I have the Baltimore Catechism on my shelf because it's very wonderful. It's very large and that sort of thing. The new Catechism, second edition, isn't that way. How it approaches the work of salvation, the work of God, as a narratio, as a story. And the story of God, the story of us, how we fit in that story, this in the seen and unseen, right? The creation, the angels, and all of this sort of thing. And we see if you will, the thesis statement. The thesis statement for the Catechism is found in paragraph number 1. So if you ever get lost about what it's about, just remember number 1. And this is what it says: God, infinitely perfect and blessed in himself. So that defines an essential feature of God. In a plan, so he has a plan or purpose of sheer goodness, not compelled, freely created man to make him share in his own blessed life. Some of that was some glosses from myself. But that's the deal. So how this drama unfolds is told in scriptures as story, in tradition, and the martyrs, the saints, the Catechism. And taken together, all these viewpoints helps us to correctly understand, and here's a term we hope to unpack here, the economy of salvation. That is defined as economy of salvation it's how the plan unfolds. And it's necessarily sacramental because it's rooted in the physical matter world. That's what
Yeah. I like that, the part about the sure, what did you say, a sure plan? Term.
Let's see. Uh, uh, freely, in a plan of sheer goodness.
Oh, sheer goodness. Sheer goodness. Yeah. A plan of sheer goodness. Yeah. It says that line alone says so much about whom we serve.
That's right. That's right.
And I like the concept of the sacramentality of it, which is, I think, going to become more and more necessary. That tangible reality, something that is knowable with our senses, because particularly as we move into this unknown territory, which is the creation of a false universe, the metaverse, this non-sacramental, non-real, non-tangible expansionism, within the brain, the exploitation. I'm reading a book right now, and I think that this pertains to it a bit, but by Hannah Arendt. It's a collection of all of her essays, but she has this one essay in her chapter on totalitarianism called Expansionism, where Cecil Rhodes realized that expansion was everything, and then basically wept in despair because he had, as far as he was concerned, they had conquered everything on Earth. There was no expansion left. But it's somewhat frightening because space is obviously unlimited, but man cannot go there because he is limited by his need to breathe. Right? I mean, the ocean would be pretty wide open, except for, once again, we have a need to breathe. But the imagination is 100% exploitative.
It is.
And the imagination can be tapped without a physical need, right? You don't. And I think that really the church must hold fast to the sacraments, which will become the anchor that keeps humans human.
That's right. And we have more to say on the economy of salvation, believe you me. But Sarah said something so spot on, which triggered recent observation within our separated brethren, is their use of what we would call sacramentals. They have discovered, much to their benefit, the use of sprinkling salt. Right. When I heard that, right, Sarah and we've talked about salt. They would say, some would say blessings over the salt and sprinkle it over them to claim it for the Lord, or to anoint their house and their lentils with oil. And just recently given impartation, that's how this one, and I'm talking, she has millions of followers, would talk about giving impartation into the objects of our loved ones, a prayer that our Lord will accompany them and guide and watch. And that physicality is coming full bore into, I think, some sectors of consciousness because of what you're saying.
Well, I think that people are recognizing that there must be an anchor. And the unfortunate reality is that, you, to impart a blessing, lay people don't have that grace from the Lord. It is not to the laity to be able to infuse blessedness into an object that is specifically given to the priestly class through the apostolic ministry, right? That comes to us through the apostles, that lineage, that physical touch of being, and when you think about that, when you think of the anchoring being in the apostles, it comes from the fact that the apostles were touched by Christ, right? I mean, it's not it's not a superficial addition that our Lord works through that. He works through that because the hands that were touched by the hands that were touched by the hands that were touched by the hands, that I mean, really, I mean, there's nothing else to call it, but a tangible reality of grace being imparted through touch is not something that we can lightly discard. Or frankly, we discard it at our own peril. I mean, at the beginning of the beginning of this pandemic, I was making a terrible observation that once the bishops permitted us to allegedly engage in mass without being physically present, that our body being in the same place at the same time as the sacrifice was being offered, the minute that they posited that could be a way that grace could be imparted, they had already begun to take a very large hammer and chisel to the reality of sacramentality. And I was speaking to a priest friend of mine and told him, I asked him, what's to come next? Waterless baptisms? Because if we don't, and that's why I'm saying it really like this, if the human body can be only exploited to a certain level before it cannot endure anything anymore. But the imagination is really like there's no limit on the expansionlessness, right? Because man has to have within his imagination, he has to be created in some manner that permits him to not be able to understand or even comprehend, perhaps, but to ponder the infinite reality that is God. And so a human person can then exploit that capacity, and really to our own peril.
That's right. All right, my friends, in the next episode, we will pick up more consideration of the economy of salvation. Till then, fides et ratio.